about $4 million to defeat Coates.
The Senate race is going to be put on the auction block. Quite frankly, I'm going to be outspent, probably 2 to 1. And it's a tragedy that it has to be put on the auction block like this. And if I get elected to the United States Senate, or more importantly, I should say, when I get elected to the United States Senate, I will introduce legislation.
Hello, you've reached the Teen Talk line. Hours are 3 to 5 p.m., Monday through Friday, except holidays. Please call back then, or leave a message at the end of this announcement. Wait for the tone. Leave just your first name, telephone number, and a brief message. A volunteer will call you back. Here's the tone.
Welcome to Inside the Teen Talk Line. Today's guest is Rosemary Hostetler from the Porte Hospital. And now here's your friendly host, Mickey Rogers.
Hello and welcome to Inside the Teen Talk Line. Today we're going to interview LaPorte Hospital's own Rosemary Hostetler. Thank you for coming today, Rosemary.
Thank you for asking me, Mickey.
First, I'd like to ask you, how did the Teen Talk Line program get started?
Well, it was kind of an outgrowth of another group that was meeting, talking about women's problems in LaPorte and what the hospital could do to help those. And the Women's Center started from that. Then there came a time, all right, what about teenagers? What are the things we can do? What do they need? So there was a task force put together of just people who were interested in teens, like from service agencies, from the schools, naturally, and from the hospital. And that's where the idea came from.
Okay, was there a certain reason why it was started?
Yeah, because in all our meetings of about a year, we came up with pages of ideas and needs and things to do, but what could we do? I mean, what was feasible? And the feeling of people who worked with kids was to be able to talk with someone without judgment, making a judgment on them, but just to be able to discuss what was bothering them. These people felt might help prevent some more serious things that we were really concerned about. You know, that if any way you can direct a young person to some help that will mean something to them before they get into that point of no return, you might say. Right. That was the aim.
Who answers the phone at the Teen Talk Line?
We have some very good volunteers. Actually, there are 10 young people who rotate each one time every other week, generally. Some of them do it more than that.
Right. How did they become volunteers for this?
We called around, tried to find from school, from different people we knew in the community. Who would you recommend? We had a list of about 50, Mickey, and we called and we had some meetings, and when it really came down to the end, who could participate, who had the time, who was where, we ended up with 10 very good people.
And was there a certain training that they had to go through?
Oh, there sure was. They had one whole day of training with Rick McAllister from our stress center, which is our area that helps with mental health or with substance abuse, and also Sandy Mortensen, who is at our community health education. Basically, they were trying to be taught a little bit more about listening, the listening skills, and about community agencies that could be used as referrals. But that was a whole day's training.
So it was pretty intensive?
It was. And that was one of the things. If a volunteer was unable to take, you know, that training, then that kind of put them out.
Okay, so say I have a problem, and I've talked to my friends, and they particularly can't help me. So I decide to call the Teen Talk Line. What would happen once the phone rang at the hospital?
Okay. The first thing would be a pleasant voice saying, good afternoon, or hello, Teen Talk Line. This is, give a name, and a lot of times the kids do not use their own names, they use another name. Could I help you? And I've heard, I'm in the position of overhearing a lot of them.
Right.
And I hear how the Teen Talk Line volunteers kind of bring out what it is. Sometimes that problem that the kid really wanted to call about doesn't come out on the first whack. It comes out later. So they kind of chat with them, talk with them, ask questions. It seems to me that I've heard a lot of question asking there. And then you may be asked, too, for your name, your first name, that's all, and a number you can be reached at.
Why is that?
Well, a lot of times, Mickey, a call will come in, and see, there's always someone there, like usually it's myself or the person in the office, Sue Salt, or Edna Kelsey, who is a volunteer with this group. You kind of talk it over, the volunteer talks it over with the person in the office. Sometimes you come to conclusions, hey, here's something else this person might do. I remember a couple of times where talking it over with someone led to another call back to this person to suggest something else, a new avenue, a new referral, a new idea. So that's why we like to get, then too, if you're cut off or something and you haven't concluded your conversation,
That could cause a problem.
you can go ahead and use that number.
Right. Okay, I believe we have a videotape of the Teen Talk Line area, and let's take a look at that now. Porte Hospital Volunteer Workroom, where the Teen Talk Line telephone hotline is based. Here is the actual phone right here. This is the phone that calls come in on, probably daily, we'll assume. And if there is no volunteer here to answer the phone call will come in through the answering machine with the message that you heard playing at the beginning of the show. In here, when someone calls, there are bundles of information in these 3 drawers and in a box here on the floor. This is used when someone calls in, and the volunteer can peruse through these boxes and find a referral to give to the caller for anywhere from a drug agency to another hospital, perhaps the Youth Service Bureau, anywhere else. Here's another phone. We used to have 2 phone lines at the Teen Talk Line, so that when someone would call in and the other phone was busy, then this would ring in the answering machine and it would play another message telling them that the phone line was busy. During the teens' 2 hours, they work 2 hours about twice a month, and during this 2 hours they can do homework, read notes, write letters, or one thing that one of the volunteers here started was a chain story, which we have a new one started here, written by several of the volunteers. And the last chain story they had, I understand, it came up to be about 15 pages. And I had a chance to read it, and it turned out pretty interesting. So these people, not only are they great people for volunteering, but they also have a heck of an imagination to put this 2 hours to work for them. If they're thirsty, they have the hospital cafeteria, which they can go to pick up a Coke or something. And there's always an adult across the hall who can help in an emergency. If someone should call and they have a problem that the teen can't deal with at that point, which doesn't happen very often, but the adults are there for support and can help the teens in case that they don't know where else to answer and how else to help them. Well, that was a pretty interesting explanation of the location of the Teen Talk Line. Rosemary, could you tell us what kinds of problems have you handled in the past? What kinds of calls?
Have the volunteers handled?
Right.
Okay.
That's what I mean.
One of the things, Mickey, I want to tell you, because I do hear these calls a lot, I have been very impressed with the way they are answered. It seems to me the young people who are working as volunteers, who we also try to keep anonymous, as you know.
Right.
We don't want people to know who it is that's calling and answering or anything. They do such a good job of bringing out, and they're very supportive of parents, of schools. They're not in any way, hurting that area. They're trying to make the young person usually relate more to those areas and try and help them see through
Perhaps
what's
look at
happening.
options.
Yeah, look at options. I hear a lot of questions asked. Why did you feel this way? What would you think you should do?
Trying to bring it out from the person calling.
That's right, and I think that's a really good trait. But to get back to your original question, okay, what kinds of problems? Well, we always think the most serious ones first, I
Right.
guess. And one that sticks in my mind is one that happened not too long ago when there was a message on the machine. The volunteer and the message said to call so-and-so and such a number.
Right.
The volunteer did that and found out that there was something very serious going on, a suicide attempt. And the volunteer immediately told the person to call the Youth Service Bureau, because that's one of our basic referral places.
Right.
They do an excellent job. They have people there that are immediately wanting to answer. And from that call, then in conversation with the adult, it was decided to call the Youth Service Bureau to see if this young person had actually called to get a referral.
Right.
And at that point, the person hadn't. So the staff of the Youth Service Bureau decided, we're going to go ahead and call.
They
And
were
I guess it's a
concerned.
good thing they did, because there was some help they could offer that saved, you can say, saved this person's life. Okay, that is of utmost importance,
Right.
isn't it?
Right. I understand you've had a few interesting problems. The math.
Oh, the math problem. Hey, that was...
What was the girl looking for? Milliliters of
Something like that, and the volunteer who answered the phone, just didn't know what to do. But out of that experience came that we found there was something called Dial a Teacher
Right, here at the high school.
at the high school. And so there again, the telephone number from this person was really important,
So-
because they called back and gave, since that bit of information wasn't immediately accessible.
And perhaps the volunteer didn't, it maybe, other people wouldn't think it was important, but to that caller, it
Yeah,
was most certainly
it
important.
was.
Or they wouldn't have called. So there's a pretty wide range
Oh,
of
yeah.
problems then.
I think a lot of them, though, Mickey, deal with personal relationships, like with their friends.
Boy, girl. And
Yeah, boy, girl, or girl, girl, whatever.
Right.
It's difficult. They're problems, and sometimes just by talking them over and listening. And, one thing I think we ought to really make clear, this is not a crisis line. It is not a hotline.
Right.
It is a talk line. It's where a young person can call, and whatever they want to talk about, they can talk about. And the volunteers listen, participate, and help play back, feedback, so that that person maybe has some new ideas after they call.
Right. Maybe because the caller has a closed mind to, so to speak, what they're looking at.
Oh, don't we all when we
Yeah.
have problems? I mean, we just see it from our point of view, and somebody saying, well, what do you think happened, or why, or something? It makes us go on a different avenue.
Right. It helps them see another point of view.
Yeah.
Is there a limit of who can call?
Oh, I don't
Teen
think
Talk
there's
Line?
ever been, whoever calls, that's it. And there have been, from all ages, there have been some very young ones, fifth graders. But there have been some that have been, I think, over 20, too.
And you've had some information calls too, like just called to see what it was about, and
Yeah,
some information. Parents even, I believe, have called
I think so,
to ask for referrals and things like that.
because they're having a particular problem with their child and they want to know where to take them. And I think, too, we've had some calls. I notice here on our referrals, we've made referrals to Alateen, which is a group that young people can go to if their parents are involved in substance abuse. So those are some of the things. The Youth Service Bureau really has been the one that has gotten most of the referrals from us, because they've been things that involved either relationships that seem to be needing some really professional help.
Perhaps we'd better make a note of what kind of referrals are made to where we've mentioned a few places, Alateen, the Youth Service Bureau. What kind of resources, what kind of referrals are made to these people besides that, or are there?
Really, that's been, the main place has been Youth Service Bureau, because they have the counselors to help, and in a non-threatening way.
Right, at a more in-depth.
Yeah, more in depth. So I think that, and then I think there's been a lot of information given out about when support groups meet for different kinds of things. So we haven't had to date any calls that involve abuse. But we do have a system set up, forms made out, and a procedure the kids are taught to use in case there is some child abuse call, too.
Is that necessary? Is that...
Oh, yeah, that's something, when that's handled, it has to be done very, very carefully, and there are certain rules in regard to it.
There's a law.
There's a law that
isn't
you
there,
have to report, and but you also have to maintain confidentiality to a large extent. So there's a regular protocol that's outlined for that. But like I say, fortunately, we haven't received that. A lot of it is chatting. They're lonesome, I think. They want to talk.
You think so?
Yeah, and some, you can tell, and these are annoying to some of the kids, I think, where, they're just testing you. They're just calling to see if this line really, if they're real people at the other end.
Maybe making up things?
Yeah, making up weird stories. At least I think they're weird. I don't know.
Yeah, I hope they are. They are
But
weird.
that's part of the game, and we do have a meeting every month, so that all the volunteers can come together and talk over what's happened and maybe come to some conclusions about how
I was going to ask what kind of things go on at the meetings.
It's basically talking over. I think one of our problems is to get knowledge of this line to those who can use it, and we're going to try and reach middle school and upper elementary with a new card. Too bad I didn't bring one along. One of our little cards that say Teen Talk Line, lend an ear or something, and it's really...
Oh, and I believe, I think I've
Have
heard
you seen
something.
them?
Who designed, how did they get these cards?
Oh, that was a card that was designed by some of the volunteers.
Oh.
When they would come, and if there weren't phone calls, they would play around with ideas.
Another thing to do during the time, make little drawings and doodles. Okay, in your opinion, how successful do you think this program has been so far? I know it's only been up for, what, maybe 6 months?
Not quite that long. October is when it started, really the end of September, October.
Okay, 4 and 5 months.
Yeah.
So how successful do you think it has been?
How can you determine success on numbers? When you think of the depth of some of them, that I really feel it was important. I think it's worth it. And I think it will grow. I think as young people come to know this is available, come to know they can use it, that the use of it will grow. We do need more information on it, I think, in the community. But success, I think it is, and I think it's needed, too.
So you think if they can help, it's that recurring attitude, if you can help one person, then it all is worthwhile?
One a month.
One a month, you think?
And that's certainly from the statistics I have here, that it has been more than one a month. So the calls may not be bang, bang, bang all through the 2-hour period, but there's been some ones that have really been meaningful, I think, to the person that received the information and help.
And how do the volunteers feel about the program? Maybe their specific calls? Do they get excited when they get a call?
Oh, they get so excited when they get a call. It's just like, something wonderful has happened when they get a call and they can really help someone.
Okay.
So,
I believe, we'll show the number for the Teen Talk Line here. And there it is.
Okay.
Phone line 326-2366. And they're open weekdays, Monday through Friday, 3 to 5, I believe.
right.
Okay, and you can always leave a message if that's not convenient. I believe you've got the actual sheet. You can hold that up. And
Could I do that?
Sure.
Because there is also a toll-free number, and I'm not sure you can see that, a toll-free number that people outside the LaPorte area can call. And I think that's important. See the toll-free number down there? It might get
okay, you
it
might want to
right.
read that number.
Okay, it is, I can't from there, 1-800-654-4841. And then the extension is the same, 2366. Yeah.
Okay, so if you have a problem or you just want to talk, then go ahead and call Teen Talk Line. There's volunteers from 3 to 5 every weekday who'd be more than happy to help you, I'm sure. Well, that about wraps it up, Rosemary. I appreciate your coming, spending your time here to talk to us about this new service.
It was fun.
Thank you for coming.
Yeah.
Welcome to Forum Follow-Up. Today's guests are Claudia Mueller, Hollis DeWitt, and Lisa Avery. And now, here's your moderator, Mickey Rogers.
Good day, ladies and gentlemen, viewers of WLPS television. My name is, of course, Mickey Rogers, and I'm our host for today's follow-up for the forum. The forum that we are following up is the National Issues Forum. I have here the Trade Gap booklet that was handed out to students in English classes and history classes or social studies classes here at the LaPorte High School. And several weeks ago, we did a forum on the Trade Gap right here on WLPS Channel 4. Today, our panelists, I'd like them to introduce themselves and perhaps tell a little bit about why you're here or what your part was in the forum that we had a few weeks ago.
Thank you, Mickey. My name is Lisa Avery. I'm a senior at LaPorte High School. I have Mrs. Jean Burns for Honors English. I think that's how I became involved in this National Issues Forum project. I participated so far in the Freedom of Speech panel, which was a like Congress, student Congress, and I participated in the Superpowers panel, and I was a member also of the Trade Gap panel. And I'm interested in this, in the trade gap, especially because I feel that it applies to all of us, and it seems like something that's far away, but really it's not, and it's going to hit home sooner than we realize.
Good day. My name is Hollis DeWitt, and I'm also in Mrs. Burns' Honors English class. And she's been promoting the National Issues Forums since they began this year. I've been involved in all three forums as Lisa. Basically, I feel that this is an important issue dealing with basically our future, and every one of us is going to have to deal with sometime in the future businesses and the fact of trade. And I feel that as one of the members of the future of tomorrow, well, one of the future leaders of tomorrow maybe, I think it's something that I ought to know about, and everyone else should also.
My name is Claudia Mueller, and like Hollis and Lisa, I'm in Mrs. Burns' Honors English class, and she, too, got me involved in this. I've been in all three forums as well, and I moderated the last one on Trade Gap. I think I'm most interested in this topic because my relatives all live in West Germany, and therefore I travel a great deal. So the Trade Gap, to me, means products that I can buy in the various countries and the value of the dollar. So it's an important topic for me right now.
Okay, thank you. Now that we've met our panelists for today, Claudia, you touched on it in yours. Could any of you explain for, perhaps someone who's not really clear on what exactly is a trade gap?
Well, the trade gap is more or less, I would say, the issue that we're involved with the trade with mainly Japan, but also with other countries. Right now, we import more foreign goods than we export, and that is a problem since we're in debt to many other countries because of it. So right now, I think the main issue is closing the trade gap, which would mean exporting more of our goods and purchasing more American-made goods in lieu of foreign imports.
I think Claudia's touched on the main point right there. Basically, the fact that we're importing more than we're exporting is not good. The fact that our our workers, the people in the United States who work, their goods are not being purchased by foreign markets, and our market is buying more from other countries, so there's a deficit. It's known as the trade deficit, and it is growing each year. It's an unbelievable amount. Basically, in order for our country to prosper, we have to take pride in us. Many of you have heard the slogan, "Take pride in America," buy American-made goods. Too many of us are going abroad and buying perhaps a Toyota or a foreign-made car, but then they turn around and complain the fact that the steel mill has been closed down. I think a lot of it deals with what we personally do with our capital.
I believe Hollis touched on the fact that the American worker is losing his place in his job while still sometimes purchasing goods from another country. I think that this is escalating the trade gap at an unbelievable rate.
Okay, you all sort of touched on the fact that the trade gap is a problem. Say, just to clarify, so how can, Hollis mentioned cars, buying a car. How can this affect the average American citizen? Will it, are prices unbelievably higher for domestic goods or foreign goods, or how is it affected?
Well, one big effect it has is on the job market. It has probably the biggest effect it has is that our American workers could lose their jobs because their factories are closing, their plants are closing. We're not selling enough American-made cars, so our steel mills and, the auto factories are closing down. And that's not a new thing to our nation, and that's one of the biggest ways that the trade gap can hit home.
So job rates are risked, but what about the consumer aspect of it?
Well, Mickey, I think that's the main point that you touched on there. That's where the average American, every one of us out there, is going to feel it the most. I mean, if our job doesn't deal directly with trade, then it's not going to seem as though it's that important to us. But in everything we buy, the trade it plays a factor in it. When you buy your clothes, if they're American-made, well, then you're dealing with American-made products, and they're trying to compete with the foreign markets. And one of the main problems when doing that is that the other countries, such as Japan, they have a lower standard of living, and so they are paid less for the work that they put in. And the United States, since it has one of the highest standards of living in the world, we have a minimum wage. We're expected to be paid so much, and because we expect so much, it forces the price up of all of our goods. And I think that if we didn't have the problems if we didn't have the trade gap or anything to that effect, if we didn't have these problems with the other countries, then you'd see the major difference between the prices of goods made in the United States and that in Japan. So basically, it really affects the consumer.
But I think even beyond that, even if your job isn't directly linked perhaps with trade, eventually you will begin to feel the burden, because how long can there be well-paid jobs, such as the $20 an hour job that everyone always talks about? How long can they still be available with this continuing and escalating trade gap? I think that's a major flaw in all of our lives, and it looms even greater in the future, since we do have to worry about jobs as we grow older.
So then perhaps a decrease in the workforce could, in turn, in the long run, bring up prices of, say, automobiles, that fewer companies, fewer workers could make the cost of running, or, higher salaries could bring the cost of buying a new American-made car.
And then that would cause a gradual lower rate of employment, as well as lower salaries in the future.
I think the main point that needs to be done as far as with the trade gap and with the United States is that people need to be made more aware of it. Basically, not enough people know about the problems that we face with the trade. And that's something that this particular organization, the National Issues Forum, is trying to do. They're trying to promote the publicity of it, and they're trying to make the citizens more aware of it. That's what we're trying to do now. I think that once the public becomes aware of a problem, things will go much better from there, because you can't do much about a problem that you're not aware of.
I agree with Hollis. We think that the trade gap is something that's far away from us, and it's not going to touch, it's not going to affect us. But I think that that's not true. I think it's going to start to show very soon.
Okay. Hollis touched on the National Issues Forum. The purpose of the National Issues Forum is to pose 2 or 3 or 4 different points of view, and not to be biased, but to give that point of view to the person who is watching the forum, to show them the different options that they may follow. Now, I noticed you mentioned the fact that I noticed Japan keeps coming into the spotlight here, and lately on the news they've had things such as congressmen beating music boxes, Toshiba products, or people at American car companies like the Teamsters, I think, or the auto workers, that is, driving a Honda off a cliff. Things like that, just really violent, but it's called Japan bashing. And I think their point of view is that Japan is becoming too superior, perhaps, to America. Maybe that America, conversely, is inferior to other countries. Do you think that's so, and if so, how?
Well, Mickey, I think that I don't really think that the United States is inferior to anyone as far as trade. What we have in the case of Japan is we have sort of different gaps in different areas. They're superior to us in some ways, and we're superior to them in others. I think the main problem that we're having with Japan today is that we import so many goods from Japan because they have some of the greatest technology. But in turn, Japan imports almost none of our goods, and when they do, they encourage their people to buy Japanese, which is something where the United States is getting into now, buy American. But the thing is, they have sort of a double standard. They want us to accept their goods and promote them to our country, but in turn, they don't want to do the same thing for us. So basically, the problem is that Japan is not playing fair.
Okay.
I do think that one thing most Americans, and most people, in fact, tend to forget is that after World War II, the United States greatly helped Japan to rebuild the wreckage of the war. And that, in turn, now, even economically, not just physically as in buildings and so, but as well economically. So I think now Japan is reaping some of the benefits from that early encouragement. And that could be one of the factors that is causing Japan to have such, I would say, a better reputation as far as the trade gap is concerned.
So perhaps we help too much. Okay, we've determined that there is definitely a problem, a trade deficit, a trade gap between the United States and Japan. How perhaps can this be solved? Any ideas?
I think education is the key to our nation becoming successful again. I think education in the United States is going to a more back to the basics routine. You know, we're finding out that we're going to school more, and a lot of that is controversial. But I think in the end, it'll show that it'll be worth it, because we need to come up even, with Japan. They go to school a lot longer. They go to school all year. They know all of these languages that we don't know. Japanese isn't even offered here in the United States in most schools, but yet it's one of the most widely, spoken technological languages.
Well, Mickey, to go back to what you said before, the National Issues Forum booklet does provide a few different options as to, or opinions, I might say, as to what should be done. And one of those, as Lisa pointed out, is education, and the feeling that we should further education in order to resolve this gap. But one of the, most likely the point of view that I subscribe to is the fact that we need to bring down the barriers in between the United States and the other countries with which we are trading, because basically these barriers set up between us are being added to more and more, and eventually the prices are going to be out of range of the consumer. Basically what happens is we have protectionism. We're trying to protect our businesses, and they're trying to protect their businesses by constructing barriers. And I think these barriers need to be lowered in order to have a fair common trade ground.
I think you touched on this before, Hollis, the concept of protectionism. Protectionism is when a country erects certain barriers that Hollis spoke of against imports. So we would say, in other words, it would be as if the United States would limit the importation of Japanese cars. Now, while this may seem like an excellent idea on the surface, it does lead to some repercussions that I don't think our country is ready to face right now. It leads to trade wars, which which would involve Japan then limiting the importation of American goods to Japan, and that would hurt us, I think, in the long run even more. So I don't think protectionism would be a good answer for this trade gap at this time anyway.
Any other brief feelings on protectionism? Protectionism is legislative efforts. Is that
Basically, there are laws constructing tariffs to certain countries as to how much they should pay, and additions on imports and everything. So basically, protectionism is not something that I think is a solution at this time.
Because it's okay, because it does lead to a domino effect, a snowball effect.
I agree. I believe that the key to this is buying American and reinstilling some kind of a pride in our nation and in its goods. And until we can do so, I mean, we're starting to try to do that now, but until that can be done, and it might take a long time, then we're going to have some serious trade problems.
Okay. We've discussed the trade gap. We've been discussing the trade gap for about the past 20 minutes. We were working out of some ideas from the National Issues Forum Trade Gap booklet. If you're interested in learning more about the trade gap from this booklet, they're available at the LaPorte Public Library. They have a few of them. There will be more national issues forums here at the high school for the public to be involved, and you're always free to work on yourself to start your own forum. So I'd like to thank our panelists, Lisa, Hollis, and Claudia, for coming here today. And I'd like to thank you, the viewer, for watching the show today. Thank you.
And you're watching WLPS from LaPorte High School.
Hello, and welcome to Student Strides, a show to get you, the viewer, more acquainted with some of LaPorte High School's outstanding students. Today, your host, Mickey Rogers, will talk to Lisa Avery about the girls' softball team. And now, here's Mickey.
Well, hello again, and welcome to Student Strides. Like Julie said, my guest today is Lisa Avery, and I'm here to talk to you about softball. Lisa, thank you for coming down.
Thank you, Mickey.
Tell me how you got interested in softball, first of all.
Well, I've always played softball since I was younger. I can't remember not throwing the ball around out in the yard with my dad. We had bases carved in the yard when we were younger and had pitcher's mountain. And my mom, every year she tried to plant grass, and stuff like that, but it never worked because we have just always played in my family. My dad's never pushed me, but he's always encouraged me to participate in softball.
Did you play with the neighbors?
Yeah, we had one guy that's on the JV baseball team now, and we played with him since I was 5 and he was 3, so it's been a long time.
So, okay, you're pitcher now on the softball team, right?
Right.
How did you become pitcher?
Well,
is that the only position you've held, or?
No, as a freshman I caught. I was the starting catcher my freshman year and most of my sophomore year, and then I pitched a couple games my sophomore year, but I wasn't really very good at all. I was like the third pitcher. But my junior year, there was only one pitcher, and it was obvious we were going to be needing a pitcher that year and then the next year also, and nobody else wanted to do it, and I don't like to pitch. I really rather would catch. But we needed a pitcher, and I figured, I'd rather win pitching than lose catching. So Jennifer Mount, who's a math teacher here, pitched down at Ball State, and her and I started coming in the mornings for conditioning, and we started that in January, like at 6 in the morning, and then just started working on the basics of pitching, and by April, when the season started, I was pitching okay, but I worked a lot in the off-season this year, too, because I needed it.
It sounds like it. How has your season gone?
Right now, we're 3-1, and 1-1 in the conference. So 3-1 overall. We beat South Bend Clay, Michigan City Marquette, and Portage, and we've lost to Hobart.
So how did you, we've got the numbers, but how did you feel about your performances as a team?
I think the Portage game was a good team effort. We've been, the first couple of games we've been swinging at some bad pitches and stuff like that, just because we've been laid off so long. But I think that we're finally starting, excuse me, to come together as a team. Our first two opponents, Clay and Marquette, weren't that, strong. And we really didn't do very well in Hobart, but we played Portage this past week, and we did very well. Tonight we're scheduled to play Chesterton, and I think that, we're starting to come around.
Okay, I know, what was it, 2 weeks ago, you threw the first no-hitter, I think, in LaPorte High School history.
For girls.
For girls, softball,
yes.
Correct. How did that make you feel?
Well, it felt okay. I was expecting, it was my goal, actually. That's probably not a very good goal, but I set out against South Bend Clay with the goal that I wanted to throw a no-hitter, and it just so happened that that's what I did. And a lot of things can happen, to affect it, cheap hits or things that, help someone get a hit where, even if you don't let them. But I think it was a pretty good performance, and struck out 12 and walked 5 against Clay. And here we're playing Portage.
Right. This is the Portage game last Tuesday, April 19th?
It was Monday the 18th.
Monday the 18th.
Yes.
How'd you do in that game? You won it, didn't you?
Yeah, we won 9-5, I think.
Okay. Who starts usually in the games?
Well, Lisa Daniel plays third. She usually leads off. And Lisa's one of the 4 slicers that have played for 4 years. Myself, Lisa Daniel, Tracy Layton, and Angie Jeffries have all played for 4 years. Angie Jeffries, like I said, usually plays shortstop. At second base is a sophomore, Jody Strojny. At first base, Julie Rinker, Julie Delahani, and Tracy Layton have all seen some work at first base. And catcher is a junior, Jill Hughes, in her first year of catching. In the outfield, we have a very fast outfield with Nichelle Anderson in left, T. Parks in center, and usually Tracy Layton, if she's not playing first, she plays right. So we have a very solid outfield.
Sounds like a strong team. How do your practices go? When do you practice? What do you do during your practices?
Well, we practice every day that we don't have a game, and also we practice on Saturdays before Monday games. Probably mostly we work on hitting, because it's in fast pitch softball, the timing is a key thing, and some pitchers are really slow, and while others are really fast, and so the coaches try to pitch the same speed that the pitcher that we're anticipating that we're going to face is going to pitch in our upcoming game. And we usually work on some bunting. We work on bunting a lot. We have a very good bunting team. We work on that at practice, and also infield. And
What's more or less the difference between fast pitch and slow pitch?
Well, there's a lot of difference. Fast pitch is, it's like baseball, with a softball. You can steal in fast pitch. You can't lead off. You can't leave the base until the ball leaves the pitcher's hand. Obviously, the speed of the pitch is, girls
hence the name, right?
Throw probably between 45 and, I would say, 60 in high school fast pitch softball, and that's obviously the biggest difference. You can bunt in fast pitch, and also you play with 3 outfielders in fast pitch as opposed to the 4 in slow pitch.
Is there a high risk of injury? I noticed at the game, the catcher got hit by a bat, I believe. Yeah. We had it on the tape. And do things like that happen a lot? Are people really getting hurt a lot?
Well, there's a risk of injury in anything you do, Mickey, but I suppose that the risk is higher in fast pitch. I know catching, I got popped a few good times, by people coming into home, and those things are just going to happen. At slow pitch, I suppose there's injuries too. There's contact and stuff, but in fast pitch, we've had a few injuries this year. Tracy Layton, our right fielder, excuse me, got 8 stitches above her eye where she got hit by a line drive and stuff. So I suppose that, the risk of injury is a little bit greater in fast pitch than slow. There's always little things that can happen too.
Right. For the team, okay, on the Portage team at the game, there was a girl who had some whacked out hairstyle. Okay, now that made my curiosity, it sparked my curiosity. Does the LaPorte team, there we see the catcher being hit, but does the LaPorte team have a rule system such as, say, the boys team does, where, you know, they have to have their hair cut over their ears? Does the girls team have any sort of rules like that?
Well, Mr. Laughlin would probably like us all to wear his hair like his, but I don't think we would like that very much. No, we don't have any set rules on that. You know, there's no rules as far as, you know, appearance, just as long as, you know, I mean, we all just, you know, you can't wear jewelry or anything in the game.
Mm-hmm.
You can't wear earrings. You can't wear barrettes. But other than that, there's really no, you know, rules. And those aren't our team rules. Those are, you know, rules that the umpires delegate, just to protect the players from injury.
Right. What about, say, are the code book rules the same as every other sport, or?
Yeah, basically, you know, we have, you know, our own team rules. If you miss practice the day before a game, you know, you generally, if it's unexcused, you don't start
Right.
in.
Those kind of
things like that. But basically, there aren't any exceptions, you know, any different rules that any other teams don't have, I don't think.
Okay. Well, now, you've been playing softball for how many years?
Oh, probably 13 or 14 or so.
Okay, and you're 18 now?
Yes.
Okay. Do you plan on doing more softball next year at college?
Yes, I'm going to be attending Ball State next year, and I'm not sure whether I'll be getting a scholarship or not. I might be walking on for my first year, but I do plan to play for Ball State. Coach Jerry Finley, and I contacted her about my interest in playing there next year, and it looks, you know, prospects look good for next year in college.
Okay. So, what's different? Is there a difference between college ball and high school?
Well,
maybe not just the talent, but that kind of thing.
Well, you play. We have a 40-foot difference from home plate to the pitcher's mound, as opposed to in college where they have a 42-foot difference. Other than that, really, I can't see. The college, you know, they obviously play more double headers. Our games are usually single games. But if in college, you know, if they're going to make the trip, you know, say Ball State, like they play Western Michigan as one of their conference teams, if they're going to make that trip all the way up there, they just play the 2 games while they're there. Whereas, like, we play Portage 2 times a year, but we play them once at LaPorte and once at Portage, you know, but they play a lot of double headers in college.
There we see the hair that I was referring to earlier. I don't know, I just had to get that on there, you know, for some reason I had this urge to show it on TV. There you see it. We've seen it. Now we can laugh. You know, we can sleep at night now.
That was Angie Jeffries on second base. Angie is one of the co-captains of the squad this year, and she's also been on the team for 4 years, and this is about her 3rd year at shortstop. And so she's really starting to come around defensively, where, you know, I think all the experience we have is a key to our success this year, because with Leighton, Daniel, Jeffries, and myself all being 4-year veterans, that is an asset to, you know, to the team's quality, because that's going to matter a lot in the long run. The experience is going to help us in tournament play. I think, you know, our hitting is also starting to show through. We just have to be careful on our pitch selection, but the more experience you have, generally, the better off you are. And we had, I think, 10 returning letter winners this year, so that, again, is an asset to the team in the greatest way.
What are the you said captain, co-captain. What are your responsibilities being the captain?
Well, just to provide, you know, a general kind of leadership for the squad. Angie Jeffries and myself are the co-captains this year, and Tammy Paxson and Julie Loudenslager were last year. And like, if the team has a car wash, you know, we need to make a schedule for who has to work. You know, then the captains and the co-captains do that, because, you know, we know who are friends and who hangs around and stuff like that, and so we just schedule people together. And also, I think in the locker room it's kind of important. I know that we've had girls in there fist fighting after games because one of them took the other one's ball and stuff like that. And that's where, you know, it's kind of the responsibility of a captain to step in and say, get everybody back down to earth and just sit down and talk it out instead of
try to pull the team together.
Right. You know, and times people get down on each other, or get down on the coaches, or, you know, get down on themselves or whatever. That's, you know, it's not just a captain's responsibility, but you know, like we have other, like Lisa Daniel and T. Parks have also, you know, I think been influential in, as far as leading the team go, because they help out too. Just because you're not a captain doesn't mean that you can't, you know.
So not only is it, you know, a titular kind of thing, you know, it's not just a title that says captain, but other people hold responsibility. They maybe the seniors kind of take a leadership role.
Yeah, I think, you know, it's important. We have a junior varsity squad also, Mickey, and it's important to help them out because, you know, if you see something little that they're doing wrong, you know, and you have 20 girls on the JV, the coaches might not always have time to stop and tell them the one little thing that they're doing wrong. But if you can, right, you know, if I can pull them aside and say that, you know, they need to choke up more on the bat or something like that, then that's going to help them in the long run. It also helps out the coaches because they might not always have enough time to work with everybody as much as they would like to.
I see. Say, okay, if you had a neighbor, somebody who was, you said you've been playing 13, 14 years. You have a neighbor who's 5 years old, 6 years old, and you're out pitching around, you know, or throwing the ball, catching the ball with your dad or your brother or somebody. And yeah, hard to believe, huh? But say they want to get involved. Would you recommend it? Would you say, you know, maybe not? How would you do it?
Oh, I would recommend it. You know, I think it's great. Sports are a great way to meet people, and it's just a lot of fun. I think I would recommend it because it gives you something, and sometimes, you know, you don't always want to get up and come to school, and it gets so, it gets kids who are involved do better in school, and they, you know, they stay in school more and stuff like that. And I think sports is a good way to meet people, and you know, you might not have to take it as seriously as I do because I'm very competitive and I probably take it too seriously.
Right.
But I would recommend for young girls because, you know, girls sports are advancing and stuff like that, and we're getting more publicity and stuff now, I think, than they used to. I would recommend strongly that a young girl just, you know, it starts out as a hobby. I didn't, you know, my dad did not bring me up as, you know, pushing me. He
Right.
wasn't like that. But I think, you know, to have somebody kind of give a gentle helping hand, it would be good for them to start out playing ball.
Okay, you mentioned girls' sports getting more and more popular. I know we've seen girls' basketball championships for Indiana. Indiana, of course, is a basketball state. Mm-hmm. We've seen it on TV. You know, it's things are changing, obviously. Do you feel that there's a big movement for women trying, maybe, you know, trying to move, some of them trying to move into the boys' sports? Do you think that they should remain separate or stay?
I heard like at Westville, you know, if there's no girls' sport equivalent, then they have to let the girls play the boys' sport. Like if we didn't have a softball team, they would have to let me at least try out for baseball, you know. And I think that, you know, you should get involved in whatever way you can, and if you can't participate, you know, with girls, if there's no sport for it, if there's no team, then, you know, play with the boys. I don't think that necessarily they should be kept separate. And, you know, it bothers me all the time. I hear little boys. I go out to pick up my brother from Little League practice. I hear him talking, oh, she throws like a girl and all of that. And that just drives me crazy because...
When actually they don't realize it, but you could probably throw better than
And I stand there and my dad just, you know, he'll grab onto my shoulder and he'll just say, oh. It was the other night we picked up my brother from practice and these two boys were out there. And I probably could have thrown harder than them, but why, you know, lower yourself to their level? But that really bothers. That's probably my biggest pet peeve.
You don't have to prove yourself to an 8-year-old.
Right. That just, I think that's a big, you know, myth. And I've helped coach some in the summer with some of the slow pitch leagues that we have in town. And, you know, there are a lot of girls with a lot of talent out here, you know, in LaPorte. And I think that, you know, we need to start some fast pitch and get it developed more. You know, if these girls start playing fast pitch when they're younger, I think that we're going to have a really good team in the future.
Would you like to continue coaching as you get older, maybe after college or something?
Yeah, I'm not going to go into teaching, so it will probably be rather difficult for me to get a coaching job, as they usually like to hire someone within the corporation. However, I would like to coach in the future. I don't know if just a summer recreational team, or I would like to be a high school coach or possibly even a college coach, just depending on where college takes me and stuff like that. Right now I'm planning to study journalism, so that really, you know, might not relate directly to any school, you know, any
maybe
high schools.
a sports writer?
Maybe a sports writer and give them tips on the side.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I would expect that perhaps a sports writer, you know, could maybe be more apt to find work as a softball coach?
Well,
or then
yeah.
there's always, what, leagues? Are there a lot of leagues in town?
In LaPorte, the girls just play fast pitch mostly. I mean slow pitch, excuse me. There's a 10 to 12-year-old league and a 13 to 15-year-old league, and this is all slow pitch, and then there are a lot of women's softball teams, but they're all slow pitch also.
Oh, they are all
Yes,
slow pitch?
There's one men's fast pitch league in town, that's all. There's only probably 5 or 6 teams. So really fast pitch hasn't hit LaPorte yet in as much as it has hit the Hobart, Portage, and Valpo areas.
Right.
And that's why right now we're a little bit behind the development of our team.
Okay, quickly, do you expect, in the time that we have, do you expect fast pitch to hit LaPorte?
I sure hope so, Mickey. I think that it will within a couple years. I think people are going to realize that, we need to have, if these kids are even, if the little ones, if they're even out there just playing t-ball, that's better than, going after the rainbow pitch, because that's not going to really take them anywhere.
Okay.
So.
Well, I'd really like to thank you for coming down today and taking your time out. I've been your host, Mickey Rogers, and your guest has been Lisa Avery. Squeaky Fromm is still in jail, and stay tuned to Channel 4 for more outstanding programming right here on WLPS television.
I'm glad you tuned in to WLPS Presents because today we are presenting Assistant Principal Harriet Lehner. Mrs. Lehner will be leaving the high school at the conclusion of this year's 1988 class and will be missed by many. Now, we'll go to the host of today's show, Mickey Rogers.
Why, you were over here all the time.
Well, hello, and welcome to WLPS Presents. Today, my guest is Mrs. Harriet Lehner. And hi, Mrs. Lehner, and thank you for coming today.
Hi, Mickey. You're welcome.
We'd like to talk to you about your job as assistant principal here at the high school. And to start off, I guess they want to know how your day goes during the day. How do you start your day off?
Well, I try to get here between 7 and 7:30 each morning, and I check into the office, and the secretary there, Mrs. Parker, gives me any notes or telephone calls that may have come in, and I look at my calendar to see what's on for the day, and then maybe some teachers or parents or students will drop by, and if I'm not too busy, and I try to do this real often, I walk through the halls and greet people and discuss. And by doing that, I pick up a whole lot of things to do. And so that's the way my day begins until 8 o'clock. Then I go back to the office and do what I have written on the calendar for the day.
A little bit of politicking maybe in the morning with the students?
Probably, just greeting them and seeing that everyone is okay, and if they have any problems, I'm sure they will let me know, and enjoying walking through. Everybody's fresh and ready to go, and it's a great time of the day to mingle.
Right.
Yes.
Mingling, that's a good word. Okay, you're located in the Student Services Center. Who else is in that office?
Well, I might preface it with the Student Services Center is new to LaPorte High School this year, and we were moved from the principal's office where I had served in the capacity of assistant principal for 8 years. This is my 9th year as assistant principal, And Mr. Piper and Dr. Wayne arranged during the summer to rearrange the offices, which I think has been very effective. Besides myself, there is Mr. Piper, the other assistant principal, and Mrs. Harder as administrative assistant, and Mr. Famiano, attendance officer. Plus, we have 3 clerical workers there, so there are 7 of us in this space called Student Services Center.
Okay. There's a little information about a rotating schedule. What does that entail? That you rotate with the...
Oh, yes.
The others?
We do have, our duties are defined from 11 until 1 each day. And on one day, students will find me in the small cafeteria. The next day, they'll find me in the large cafeteria. The next day, I will have duty in the office. That means be in the office from 11 to 1 for walk-ins and to do disciplining and answer any kinds of questions that anyone has. Then the 4th day of the rotation, I would be working 1, 2, 3, 5, and 6 periods and have 4th period off. So all of us do that, Mr. Famiano, Mr. Piper, Mrs. Harder, myself. And it works very well. We don't get bored, and we have a good time rotating the schedule.
Okay, you mentioned disciplining students briefly in there. How are you involved in the discipline of students?
Well, we take our turn this year. If a referral is made by a teacher, and I think most of the people in this building are familiar with what we call green sheets. They're referrals that are sent by teachers to us. And the teacher writes and tells us what rule has been broken or what violation or has been made, or perhaps a student has not conformed to the classroom management of that teacher. And then we read and talk with and listen to. We try to do due process with the student. The student has a hearing with us. And then we have a sheet of consequences for various rules and regs. And we try to be fair, firm, and consistent with what we do with students. They may go to ISS, they may go to OSS, they may go to Saturday school, they may stay for detention. Those are some of the consequences that we have.
Is Saturday school relatively new to...
Well, yes, it is, within the last 2 years. And it deals primarily with absences from class, better known as truancy, the hard word. But if you gather up 3, I believe it's 3 tardies, you're eligible. You have the opportunity to go to Saturday school. Or if you've skipped an hour, or if you've been out a whole day from your classes without verification.
Right. Is that sort of a study hall, or do they
Saturday
have their
school
homework?
is strictly academic. The kids check in from 9 to 12, and they're told to bring their books and to make good use of their time.
I see. You also evaluate teachers as part of your job. How does that, what kind of a process is involved in that?
It's a very lengthy, time-consuming process, and probably a very necessary one. This year I have 27 teachers to observe and evaluate. And the process is that it's known as a pre-observation conference. And then there is the observation, and the third step is the post-observation conference. I do 2 observations, the department chair does 1, and then we coordinate what we've seen and discussed with the teacher, and we do a final year-end evaluation report. And of course, all of this is worked with the teacher. And the teacher discusses with us approval and disapproval of what we've seen and stated and written, and eventually we sign and send it to administration.
I see. I believe we have a videotape of you in the pre-conference at this moment. So let's take a look at that now. Let's go to that now.
This is our second pre-conference of this school year. And I'm planning to observe you tomorrow morning during period 3 for second level French.
Yes.
Mrs. Nora, at this time, would you tell me what your lesson is going to be about tomorrow? What do you plan to do as an objective for your lesson?
Well, we have some specific nouns that we need to learn, the names of items that we use in the morning, like a brush, a tube of toothpaste, a comb, etc., shampoo, that sort of thing. We're going to practice learning those nouns. We've already practiced with the verbs a number of times, and so we'll be using the verbs first in the present tense and then in the past tense along with the nouns. For example, the students will role play. I'll have a couple of students role play shaving with a razor, brushing their hair with a brush, etc. And in that way we'll practice. First we'll practice individually. I'll have students say these sentences individually, then I'll have them practice with each other so that they'll be working with partners also for a while.
You stated that they will use, is this correct, TPR, or is that not total physical response?
Total physical response is when everyone in the class acts it out at the same time. And we may do that just a little bit tomorrow. We won't do it for more than a couple of moments, a few moments.
So I'll be watching then for the students role-playing
Yes.
with the use of nouns. That's verbally, and will you do some written work too?
Yes, to check up on whether they've studied the nouns the night before, as they will have been assigned to do. I'll have a written test after we do the oral practice to see if they have learned the nouns. And the last part of the hour, we'll be doing some reading aloud for a grade, which is something that is a little more important in French than it is in Spanish or German, because the pronunciation of and the written word are quite different in French than they are in Spanish and in German.
Now, have you thought about an anticipatory set for tomorrow morning? Before you state the objectives and get into the lesson, have you thought about how you're going to introduce or motivate them for this particular assignment? I know that you do a lot of motivating throughout the entire lesson by interaction, but do you have anything specific in mind?
Not at the moment.
All
Perhaps
right.
by tomorrow I'll think of something. That's a good idea. I hadn't thought of that for a time.
Right. And then you'll state the objectives and do the instructional input, and you'll guide and direct all the while you're doing that, won't you?
Oh, yes, of course.
I know previous observations have shown me that you're on your feet and moving around the classroom and talking to and helping each one of the students.
Yes, particularly as they work in pairs, I need to listen to individual pairs to see how they're practicing and to help them. And during the role playing, of course, I'll have to direct them what to do first.
Well, I'm quite excited about coming in tomorrow to observe Spanish on the second level. I'm sorry, French on the second level, doing this role play. I'll look forward to seeing you. And then perhaps after observation on tomorrow, you and I will be able to discuss the lesson further during your plan hour this time on Wednesday.
Fine, that would be very
All
good.
right. Thank you very much for coming in this morning.
You're welcome.
Education until they're completed. Teacher, period. End of report number 3, period. begin. Report number 4, Carol Miller. I'm sorry, I'm going to change that report. We're going to stay in business education until they're completed.
The next report will be Robert Leroy, business education. When Mr. Leroy and I met to discuss goals on October 9, he stated the following goals. 1, to continue to move to the back of the room during class in personal typing. 2, to teach students to type with the touch method and a level of proficiency which is acceptable by standards. 3, to demonstrate the use of the machine to the students. And 4, to maintain eye contact and to make a definite effort to know the students in typing classes.
1, to continue to move to the back of the room during class in personal typing. 2, education. When Mr. Leroy and I met to discuss goals on October 9, he stated the following goals. 1, to continue to move to the back of the room during class in personal typing. 2, to teach students to type with the touch method and a level of proficiency which is acceptable by standards. 3, to demonstrate the use of the machine to the students. And 4, to maintain eye contact and to make a definite effort to know the students in typing classes.
Means of achieving the goals stated were to stay on his feet and move around the room, to explain, demonstrate, and encourage the students to do a lot of practicing, to write into his lesson plans demonstrations of the use of the typewriter parts and the keyboard, and to greet the students at the door and to identify them through their papers handed in, and by calling them by name, Paragraph.
Identify them through their papers handed in, and by calling them by name, Paragraph.
Through presentation, observation, and evaluation, Mr. Leroy would know if the students had met the typewriting standards, He would move around the room and observe all of the students, including those in the back of the room, He would use the typewriter on the demonstration stand in the front of the room to demonstrate the use of the machine to the students, and students' attitudes.
With Mrs. Lehner here in the studio, Mrs. Harriet Lehner is supposedly celebrating her last year here at LaPorte High School. She's retiring at the end of 1988 school year, the 1987-1988 school year. Okay, after school, before the remote, we went over before school, you know, your morning daily duties, etc. When you first come to school. What goes on after school here in the building? What kind of duties do you have?
Well, primarily I work until 4:30 each day, and then I go home and have dinner, and if there are some activities that I'm assigned to, I attend them in the evening, and usually those are during football and basketball season. We've attended all those. Then we get into basketball season, go to all those games, And there are a number of clubs and organizations sponsoring evenings here, and also the music and the drama departments, just a whole lot of activities. And we do have some evening assignments, and that's what I do with my evenings during the week.
Some cultural little excursions, diplomatic things.
Well, you get to see another side of students, how
Right.
talented they are, and how much time and effort they're putting into things other than their classes. And that's very rewarding for me to see.
So it's sort of the head of state, the state kind of, you know what I mean? Where you tour, you get to see the extra side, not so much academics, right?
Right, and LPHS just really has a lot of outstanding students.
Right, okay.
Talented, that is.
Okay, attendance hearings. When someone goes over their days, you know, all the students here, of course, know attendance hearings. What is your role during those, and how do those
Well,
go?
I am assigned to act as an administrator with the attendance hearing board on some occasions, and we do rotate those assignments too in the office. And included in the hearing board would be 3 teachers, a counselor, Mr. Famiano, the attendance officer, and an administrator, plus the student and his or her parent or parents. And the counselor does a lot of pre-conference work on that, has the attendance record and the report from each one of the teachers to show progress of the student. And then each one in the room has an opportunity to talk, to ask questions, to discuss. And this is a due process hearing for a student. After this formal presentation is made by everyone, the student and the parent leaves, and a deliberation is made, an assessment, and then some recommendations come out of that hearing. And the student and parent are brought back into the room, and then we usually do a contract with the student, trying to motivate the student to do better, to have more self-discipline, and that's the process.
I see. Okay, getting away from the school itself, what are your plans after you retire?
Oh, gosh, Mickey, I wish that I knew. It's rather risky to retire after you have worked for 28 years in the field of education, from 7 in the morning until around the clock and weekly. So I really don't have a lot of plans for retirement, except that I do know that I've raised 6 wonderful children. They're now 24 through 38 years of age. I have 5 grandchildren in Colorado and Michigan, and I expect to spend a lot more time with my family and friends.
Visiting the grandkids?
Oh, indeed, and just, I guess one of the very basic practical things I'll be doing is just cleaning up my house. You know, I want to go over everything, the bookshelves, the attic, the basement, that type of thing. Plant flowers, read, enjoy myself. And Jim and I'll be going to the Southwest during January, February, and March, because my husband is also retiring.
Oh, so, and maybe a little politics in there.
Well, just maybe, but I don't know. I've never been retired.
Right.
Like I say, it's kind of risky, but I hope that it'll be an enjoyable time of life.
Okay. We've been talking to Mrs. Harriet Lehner, the assistant principal of LaPorte High School for 9 years, employee of education, the system, for approximately 20.
Well, 22 years at
22
LaPorte.
years. Okay. And I enjoyed our chat here in the studio. I hope you'll join us again for WLPS programming. Thank you for joining us.
Yeah.
Welcome to WLPS Presents Inside LaPorte's Teen Court. On today's show, host Mickey Rogers will discuss the various responsibilities participants in this new system will have. His guests will be Kelly Kozlowski, Heather Newby, and Sarah Schmitz. And now, here's Mickey.
Hello and welcome again to Inside LaPorte's new teen court. Before I begin, please allow me to introduce my three guests, Kelly Kozlowski, Heather Newby, and Sarah Schmitz. Thank you for coming down to talk with us today. First, what is teen court? Somebody like to answer that for me?
Kelly?
Kelly, go ahead.
Teen court is a system that is now used in LaPorte, and kids that has committed a crime can go to teen court and have their peers judge them, and it is not shown on the record. This is the main key to it. Pretty much sums it up.
What kind of crimes does it deal with? What?
Shoplifting and vandalism. We've only had shoplifting as our first two.
The people that go are already, they admit that they're guilty, and they are guilty, and you just give them their sentence. We're not judging them to find out if they're guilty or not. It's just giving them their sentence.
It's a really neat system. I think Indiana is the second state to start this. Texas was the first, and now we're starting it up here.
Okay. How did you all become interested? We'll start with Kelly. How did you become interested in getting involved in the first teen court in the Midwest?
I thought it was very interesting that they started it, and I just wanted to see what it was like, to see if I wouldn't want it as a career or not. And I like it so far.
Heather?
I thought it was pretty interesting to be inside, an actual courtroom and know just how things were run, and it kind of gives you an idea of law, if you wanted to study law, pre-law, criminology, or something of that sort.
Sarah?
I agree with Heather. I just saw an application, thought it'd be neat to be involved in the first teen court in Indiana and second in the nation.
So it's kind of, you just think maybe it would be kind of a good experience then, right? Just.
Yeah.
Okay. What positions do each of you hold, Kelly?
I was one of the first prosecutors in the second case. I was the first prosecutor.
Okay. Heather?
I was one of the 6 members of the jury.
Sarah?
And I was the clerk of the first case.
Okay. How did they choose what positions you would hold? How did they decide that?
It was by lottery. You filled out, on your application, you filled out what position you wanted first, 1 through 6, I think.
Mm-hmm.
A bailiff, juror, attorneys, whatever. And then they did a lottery, the lottery system, where they pulled out names, and then
That was on orientation night.
Yeah.
Everyone will have an opportunity to hold an office, and they should attend to, like in the audience.
You
just
said
to observe.
An orientation night. What was that?
He had to go to the orientation night, and there was prosecutors that talked to us, and Stephen King, the judge, talked to us, and that's when we got a feel of what was happening, and we had a mock case, and just to get the feel of what would happen.
And how was that? How did that go? Where was it?
It was at the
City
Hall.
Mm-hmm.
And well, we all came in, and it was pretty full.
And they ran through and told what each office did, like the juror and the attorneys.
And then they had the mock trial, and they just ran through. There was a girl who was play acting that she, what was it?
Had shoplifted.
Yeah, she had shoplifted, and then they gave her, we talked about the sentences that we could give her, and then, they handed her sentence.
That's interesting. So it was sort of a training kind of thing.
Mm-hmm. It got you prepared for what you'd actually be doing.
I see. And was it pretty similar, do you think, to what
Yes, I
really
think
happened?
it was really helpful to me because I think it ran a lot smoother because you knew what you were doing.
Good, good. We have some videotape of the actual courtroom where teen court is held at the LaPorte City County Complex, or whatever, the county complex downtown. It's Superior Court 3. Let's take a look at that. As we go from the station to station, we can describe, if you will, each place, what each certain job requires. Sarah, or no, Heather is the juror.
That's where the jurors sat. 6 of us sat in the front row, and then there were 2 alternates back. And from there, you have a pretty good view of the courtroom, and you can see both the attorneys and the person that has committed the crime, and you get a very good overview. So you pretty much know what's going on from
And the
there.
jurors are responsible for
Sentencing. They listen to the case, and then they go in a back room there, and then they decide what the
Okay.
punishment will be.
And there in the back, we see the bailiff. Could anybody briefly tap
Yeah,
on
the
what the
bailiff
bailiff was?
sits there in the chair, and he calls the cases to order, and he leads the jury into the back room where they can deliberate over the sentence. Then he brings us back into the room, and that's about it.
Okay, and there's the clerk's desk, I believe.
Mm-hmm. That's where I sit, and then when the judge, gives me my cue, I stand up and I say something like, teen court docket number 88-1, entitled State of Indiana versus, and then whoever now comes to order. And then I sit there and I take notes. I have a couple forms that I need to fill out throughout the case.
And there's the judge's bench, I believe. Who is the judge for this?
Jim Kaminsky was the real one, and Stephen King did the mock trial.
And Stephen King did my trial too.
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh,
The
Jim
first
Kaminsky
trial.
did the second one,
I
and
see.
then I
What
was
is
there.
the judge's role to keep things going smoothly?
Yeah, and also he checks over the jury decision.
To make sure it's not too harsh.
I see. And there we see the prosecutors and defense attorneys. Kelly, could you tell us a little about
Okay.
what goes on there?
And the closest one to you is the defense attorney. He represents the defender. And on the farther one is where I sat, the prosecutor, and I represent the state. And in front of the chalkboard, well, he moved it, where you saw the chalkboard, that was where the defenders, and we even had a father come in on the case I was in. And with the prosecutor, you try to help the person. It's not bad against good. You are trying to figure out what will be the best punishment to help the person. And the defense attorney is also pretty much the same role. We did about the same.
Is teen court a rehabilitative type of court? Is it trying to deter? Is that what it is, do you think?
Yeah.
Is it?
Yeah.
You said it's aimed to help. So
Well, the kids that are on it that committed the crime or whatever, they don't have to do it. It's their option. Because if they did something really bad or would be embarrassed, they don't have to do that. It just, helps them and might get them back in line.
The kids that pretty much come are first-time offenders. This is the first time they ever got in trouble.
Okay. What kind of punishments? We've touched on a little bit on how the jury decides the punishment, the judge decides whether it's too harsh. What kinds of punishments are we talking about here? I mean, are we talking imprisonment?
No,
the chair.
You might find them guilty, but you cannot put them in jail. You can fine them, like if they shoplift, however much they stole, you can make them pay back. Or community service work, so many hours, you can.
Yeah, they gave us a grid, what was acceptable for the age and the
Amount.
crime.
Yeah, like if something was between $5 and $10, you might give them 2 to 4 hours community service
And
work.
also, they made a written apology to wherever they shoplifted from, or sometimes use service bureau, or they just base the punishments on like if your parents, how much trouble you got in at home, if your parents grounded you, whatever, you got to go by that too.
And then on the apology letters, we decide they can be anywhere from 75 words up to 200.
You can be creative too, like if a person was drinking, then you could have them go to push meetings, or you can kind of be creative with it.
Oh, and also on the one I did, we sentenced, you could make them be a juror or, hold one of those offices.
Everybody has to serve one time on teen court.
Oh, is that a requirement of
the defenders
the
have
teen
to,
court?
isn't it?
Well, we didn't decide for ours to serve on.
Oh, I thought you said everyone.
Yeah, everyone has to
Everyone
serve
has
as a
to
juror on teen court. And once,
least
if they go
once.
there, yeah.
Oh, well, we didn't sense it. Maybe the judge said that.
I see. So, okay, your members, the first, teen court is already gone, and you were already on it, May 10th, you said. So how, you know, was it exciting? How did it feel to be a part of this innovative, new kind of thing? Was it exciting?
It was kind of scary, I thought, you know, just because, I don't know, I thought it was scary. It was exciting, though. It was a lot of fun.
Heather?
I think it made you feel more authoritative, or, you know, like you had more power over since I was deciding, you know, what would go on.
Well, in my case, I was different from them. I kind of had a little bit of a spotlight. But it's harder for the prosecutor because you're judging your peers and you have to decide what a punishment would be like to give them. And we have a pretty much harder decision to make. And the jurors probably about the same because they have to judge their peers. That's about the hardest part, in my opinion.
I thought it was kind of emotional, too, because, you know, you have to know that there has to be a punishment because they did something wrong, but then your emotions take over and you feel sorry, you know, for the person, and you really don't want to do
the one
anything.
that I was the clerk, the girl, I knew her, and just to watch her, you know, she was out there shaking, she looked like she was going to cry. It was just, you know, hard to, you know, you wanted to go up there and say, oh, don't worry, but...
So do you think, okay, if you were involved in a crime, if you were arrested, do you think you would take this route over, what are the alternatives as to teen court?
Going to regular
juvenile court.
Which is Judge Baldoni, I believe.
I think so.
Would each of you choose, how would you decide to go if you were in that position? What do you think you would do?
I'd go to teen court, I think, because everything has to be kept quiet. We have to sign this thing that says that you can't say anything about it. We can't mention the name to you or where it was at or the specifics of it. We can tell you that it was shoplifting and that. But it's pretty much quiet and it's not on your record. And since it's pretty much first-time offenders, I'd rather go to teen court and it also gives your peers a chance to help you.
I think I would choose teen court, too. You might be a little more comfortable there because even if there's someone you know that's a juror or a clerk or a bailiff, if you see them in there, you can request that they leave and they bring in an alternate. So, you know, you don't have to face, you know, a good friend or whatever.
I wouldn't, personally, I wouldn't go to teen court because I'm not brave enough, I don't think, to be judged by my peers. And personally, I'm going to give a harder sentence. I'm going to be, you know, when I'm in the jury, I think I'm going to be a little meaner to the people just because, well, but, you know, I don't think I'd be brave enough to do it.
Do you feel that you would also try for a harder sentence, as Sarah said? Being a teenager, being in the same seat, would you be as harsh as?
Well, I was the prosecutor, and I thought it was like just slapping his hand is what they did because this person, the case was just really unusual, and he even said he drank before. It was quite interesting, and they just punished him really lightly, and I would be stricter than what the one was on mine.
Personally, I thought that the punishment was harsh enough because what he'd had at home and with his friends, I mean, he was very limited to what he could do already, and I didn't see that there was much more, you know, we could do to rub it in.
So overall, though, generally, do you think a teen court would be more harsh to a teenager than an adult court would?
I do. I do, just because of the way I would be much more harsh because they are my peers.
Mm-hmm. And since they are your peers, they can relate more, you know, as to your punishment or your crime. So it'd probably be easier.
I agree with them.
I see. Okay, is your time over? Are you done with teen court now?
No, you have to serve 6 months.
Okay.
And you have to just watch 2 times. And pretty much I'm not going to quit. I'm the next clerk that is, because we ran short of clerks, and so I volunteered as the next clerk. But I think I'm going to stay on to it. I liked it.
There were a couple hundred, I think like 150 to 200 students around the community. So since we've already done one, they'll set our names aside and put the rest into like a bowl or whatever and pick. So everyone will have a chance to serve a certain
Yeah,
office.
it's on a rotation basis, so.
Okay, do you think, what kind of an effect has your experience in teen court made, you know, maybe now in your high school career? Perhaps it's given you a direction, maybe a deterrent to yourselves. Maybe you know, you're not going to say, well, these people, you know, they had to go through teen court. Well, they didn't have to, but they were, you gave the expression that they were practically humiliated. Do you think, what kind of an effect has this had on your life, do you think? Kelly?
Well, it was kind of different because it was a boy and a girl, and to the girl you were more, I guess, you felt more sorry for her because she took it more emotional, but the guy didn't take it that emotional, in my opinion. But it does make you think about what's happening in the environment around you.
I really learned a lot. I didn't realize that that much went on, you know, in a courtroom behind closed doors. You hear about a case and you figure, oh, you know, no big deal, so he gets that sentence. But it really is a neat learning experience, and it teaches you a lot.
You think so? Sarah?
Yeah, I mean, it's really learning experience, I think. And
In the long run, you know, okay, you're young, you're still in high school, you're 17, 16, maybe 15 years old. What kind of an effect will this have in your future? Are you going to pursue this perhaps as a career, do you think, Kelly?
Maybe as in the juvenile level, but not in the adult stage. I kind of would like to find out more about the juvenile prosecutor. I thought it was kind of an interesting, and I might go into that career because I like working with children.
I thought it was neat to learn about all the criminology because I want to be an FBI agent anyway, you know, so I could learn more about the court systems and the law.
also, I think it's going to help you be a better speaker and be able to, you know, come up in front of your peers and talk and stuff. That's what I'm getting from it.
So it's a good experience all around, right? Do you think? So are you pleased with how it turned out?
Yeah. I'd like to do it again.
Would you?
Yeah.
Would you encourage other people to be in it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, also, now they're talking about sending us down and talking to other people, you know, to other communities about getting into teen court.
I see. Okay, well, thank you for being here, Kelly, Heather, and Sarah. I hope you've helped to shed some light on this new little system that we've got here in LaPorte now, this unique kind of thing. And to the viewers, I hope you'll keep your eyes open for another program coming up, a closer look at the teen court from the coordinator's point of view. This will be produced by our own Jody Fiscus. I've been your only host, Mickey Rogers, and stay tuned for more WLPS programs.
Yeah, well, I'll be there tomorrow. Yeah, okay. What? Now? Here? You're watching Channel 4 WLPS, LaPorte. Bye. No, I don't know. Some weird people. I don't know what they're doing. Yeah. All right.
Welcome to the second show dealing with teen court, which is new to LaPorte. Today we will be talking to two of the coordinators, Kathy Moeller and Judge Steve Keene, and see how this new idea is working out. Now let's go to your host, Mickey Rogers.
Hi, and welcome to the show. My name is Mickey Rogers, and today we have with me Kathy Muller and Steve King, Judge Steve King. First of all, we're going to talk about teen court, so we'd better clarify. Judge King, tell us what teen court is.
Teen court is a program, Mickey, where persons under the age of 18 who have committed a crime, violated a law of the state of Indiana, can go to the probation department of the circuit court here in LaPorte and admit that they committed the crime and voluntarily agree to go through the teen court program, which means that they will appear in teen court and be sentenced for their crime by a jury of persons their own age. They will also be represented by a person who will act as their attorney, also their own age. The prosecuting attorney is a teenager, and the clerk and bailiff are also teenagers. So I'm the only adult in the courtroom, and the hearing proceeds, and the punishment is given by persons their own age. And that's essentially what the program is about. They then have to, the defendant who is sentenced to serve a various form of punishment has to complete that punishment within 90 days. Otherwise, he or she is referred back to the regular juvenile court system.
Okay, how did the idea of this teen court come about?
About a year ago in the spring, there were some high school students, LaPorte high school students, who went to the Pride Conference in Atlanta, Georgia, and there they found out about teen court in Odessa, Texas. They did a presentation there, and they were so excited by that type of program that they brought it back to the Youth Service Bureau and other agencies or people who work with youth in this area and presented the idea. I believe Lamar Coons from the Support Our Youth group was very instrumental in bringing the idea back. Cece Kaler, who's the director with Youth Service Bureau, was able to write a grant, and it was accepted, and we received the money to put on the program for a 3-year commitment by the Division of Addiction Services through the Department of Mental Health. This is the first one in the state of Indiana, so we feel very proud that LaPorte is the one that has been chosen to start this program, and hopefully we will serve as a model to other counties in the state who are interested in getting teen court in their counties also.
Okay, how could I get involved? How can anyone actually get involved in being a participant in teen court, in helping?
Okay, as a volunteer.
Right.
To serve in the roles that Judge King mentioned as prosecutor, defense attorney, clerk and bailiffs of the court, and jurors, we are asking any middle school or high school students in the LaPorte area, that includes LaPorte High School, all the middle schools in LaPorte, as well as St. Joseph and St. John's Lutheran Church, as well as the outlying schools such as the New Prairie and Rolling Prairie school systems, Westville, South Central, La Crosse, and Wanata. They all are part of the area that are served by LaPorte Circuit Court when any juveniles get in trouble, so we are asking any of them if they want to participate, that first of all they had to fill out an application that was due on April 22nd, and the second part of that was they were to come to an orientation and training session. And we had our first one for high school students April 26th, and then we're having one this evening, May 24th, for middle school students. And this will give them an opportunity to find out more about what teen court is, what their roles will involve as far as the responsibilities, what they're actually going to have to do, and then we're going to have a mock teen court hearing tonight, and we did it the first time. That will give them somewhat of an idea of what it's really like, what the procedures are, and what it'll feel like, what it'll look like when they're in there. It's very similar to regular court proceedings, so this will give them a feel and a little better understanding. Then once they've gone through orientation and training, we are going to draw by lottery the names for the first, the teen court personnel, which will have two groups. One well, both of them will consist of prosecutor, defense attorney, clerk, bailiff, 6 regular jurors, and 2 alternate jurors. And we'll have 2 groups involving all these people that will alternate cases so that everybody gets a chance to participate. Those who aren't chosen by lottery will get a chance to observe so they can gain some expertise or education about what they will need to do when it's their turn. And once one group is done, then we'll give the other people a chance to serve in those roles also. So the main thing is they have to be responsible in coming to everything we ask them to do so that they have the knowledge to perform effectively in their duties.
Is there an age limit, a maximum, a minimum?
As long as they're middle school or high school students, they're eligible.
I see. Okay. We've covered a few of the different jobs. We've mentioned the jobs that are available in the teen court situation, such as the bailiff, the prosecutor. What kinds of responsibilities do these jobs hold with them? Steve, would you like to answer that?
Sure. The prosecuting attorney, of course, represents the state, and just as any prosecuting attorney would do in any court in this land, would attempt to explain to the jury through questioning of the defendant what the crime was that was committed, and to go into matters as to the motives of the defendant in committing the crime, and to ask for a sentence from the jury that is fair to the victim and the community. The prosecutor is prosecuting. The defense attorney is the flip side of the prosecutor's job. He or she represents the defendant and attempts to bring out factors surrounding the crime or incident that tends to place the defendant in a better light. Perhaps the defense attorney will want to bring out to the jury the fact that the teen who committed this crime has already undergone pretty severe punishment at home. Therefore, the jury shouldn't necessarily impose a very harsh punishment on the defendant. Basically, to bring out the defendant's side of the story is the defense attorney's job. The clerk and bailiff, the bailiff functions much like Bull does on night court. He's there to maintain order and to assist the court in functioning procedurally. The clerk is the record keeper of the court and keeps track of everything that happens in court and makes sure that at the end of the case, after the sentence is pronounced, that the papers are placed back in the court file, given back to Kathy so that she can carry out the post-trial matters to make sure that the defendant serves the punishment, basically. So
okay.
The jury, of course, is a 6-person jury. There is an alternate or 2 that we have there every night in case the defendant or the attorneys know people on the jury. We want an impartial jury, and we make sure that the jury is in fact impartial. If they have any knowledge of the incident or they know the principles involved, then they aren't allowed to participate in the case. We want fair-minded, objective jurors, just as any court does, so that the defendant gets a fair trial. And that's basically the positions of the court.
Is it different working with kids taking over the roles of the court, or is it pretty much the same? How do you feel about working with the kids in the court rather than as opposed to the adults?
The courtroom I normally sit in is not a courtroom where I have jury trials, so I don't have a lot of experience with adult jurors, but I have watched a lot of trials at the circuit court, and I don't see much difference between the teen jurors and the adult jurors. I'm always impressed with how seriously jury members take their responsibilities. The attorneys, of course, lack the formal legal training, so that's different, but the attorneys that we've had in court so far have also done a very good job of bringing out their side of the case. And I've been real impressed with the way everyone's handled their responsibilities, and except for the difference between trained attorneys and attorneys who are doing it for the first time. There's not that significant of a difference, do you think, Kathy?
No. No, I used to work for the prosecutor in Victims Witnesses Program, and I would go down to court quite frequently as a result to help out the deputy prosecutors who are trying the case. It's very similar. I'm amazed at how similar it is, and I think this will give everybody in the courtroom an opportunity to find out what it's like. This is real, and the results of the sentencing are real, and it's not to take away from you know, that it's different than the adult court, but I think we're handing young people responsibility to perform very similarly as they would if they were in adult court. So it'll give them an insight if they have to serve as future jurors, if they want to go on and pursue law degrees or become judges. This will give them some knowledge, or hopefully they won't be in court as a defendant, but if they are, they will know the system a little bit better and what their rights are.
Okay. For a teenager to have to go through the teen court system, what kinds of rules or laws would they have had to break?
What we're dealing with, at least at this point, is misdemeanor offenses, which could include shoplifting, although I have to say that some of these offenses, if these were adults, if they were over 18 or over, they might be more serious, like felony. Shoplifting is, in certain circumstances, a felony, or maybe all. Shoplifting, alcohol violation, ABC violation, public intoxication, criminal trespass on other people's property, criminal mischief, doing damage to other people's property. There could be some minor drug offenses. There could be school offenses like truancy, or young people who run away. There are some offenses that are only juvenile related, and they will be handled in this court system as well as other more serious charges. We also have coming up battery charge. That will be coming through the teen court. So I think as it grows and people see the effectiveness of teen court in cutting down young people getting re-involved with crimes, that I think we'll have other types of offenses. But those are basically the less serious offenses if they were going through regular court, at least to start out with.
Okay. What types of punishments for these crimes would be given out? How would they be dealt with, basically, generally?
The jury has a variety of sentences available. A number of hours of community service can be imposed on the defendant. That would involve a defendant mowing lawn or picking up trash at one of the various local agencies, governmental, social service, whatever. They can require that the defendant make a personal apology to the victim for the offense, that the defendant pay the victim for the damages that they suffered. In a shoplifting case, the value of the item, or the value of the damage to the property or whatever. They can, what are some other?
They can be asked to write an essay, and the jurors can decide what the title would be for that essay, where they have to think about what they did, what they have learned from it, and what's going to keep them from doing it again. If it was an alcohol or drug offense, they may have them do some research to find out about drugs and alcohol so that they can see that not only are there consequences because they've broken the law, but what they're doing to themselves and what can happen down the road. They can also be asked to serve as future jurors, and we ask that everyone who is a defendant serve at least one time as a juror, but they can say that they have to serve more frequently. And the reason for this is that they see the other side of the fence, that they can learn too, that they have to sit, so to speak, in judgment of their peers and have to think maybe twice about what they did as a result, and also impose a sentence, a fair sentence, on other people who may be doing similar things as themselves. So we think that's a very important part of it, but we can leave it open. I mean, the young people may think of something that they feel is appropriate. And we want to leave that open for the creative young mind that we have in there, as long as it fits, as long as they've listened to what other consequences. Maybe there's been consequences at school. They were on a team and so they can't play so many games, or they lose their letter, or their parents may impose, may ground them, may take all their money for X amount of time, but they have to do work for them. There's any number of things. The parents can be called up too to ask their impression and the consequences they have imposed. So I think we're kind of leaving it open, although we do have some guidelines for them to follow.
Okay, so what's out? I mean, flogging, that kind of thing. What can't they do?
They can't sentence a defendant to jail. They couldn't, of course, impose flogging. They can't impose the death sentence. Anything within reason is going to be allowed. I would have the authority to reject a particular part of any sentence. I'm very unlikely to do that, but it would take something extreme like flogging.
Okay. Let's see. We've already covered pretty much how do teens get selected to serve on the court? They're drawn?
Okay, by lottery. Who specifically gets to do those certain things for the court cases? They are drawn each time. And as we have more cases, we may be able to utilize more of the volunteers, because I think it's real important. If we're going to get young people who are interested in being involved, we have to keep them involved, whether it's observing the proceedings and I think most of them want to be a part of it, an acting part of an active role in it. But we have so many volunteers that we have to keep working on involving them. We had 90 high school students who volunteered and 190 middle school students who wanted to do this. So I think it's our job now to try to keep them as involved as possible. Right. So we will keep using the lottery system to make it fair, and we will not keep using the ones who have done it. We'll keep using people who haven't been able to do it. And maybe we'll have 3 groups, maybe we'll have 3 or 4 cases. Ultimately, I think we're planning 4 to 5 cases each night. We're going to have middle school teen court the second Tuesday of every month, and the fourth Tuesday of every month is high school. And the high school court group will handle high school offenders, and the middle school will handle the younger offenders in that age group. And it can be anywhere from 10 up to 18, all across the board. So, and we may even have 7 or 8 or 9-year-olds down the road. And the whole purpose of it is to prevent this juvenile from going on and continuing to engage in illegal behavior. So that's the whole purpose, is to cut down on recidivism and to teach everybody how to be responsible and learn that if you're not responsible, you take consequences for that.
Okay. Overall, the first teen court has been done for about a week, 2 weeks after the first actual court. How do you think it went? How'd it go?
I was real impressed with the way the first night went. The attorneys were prepared. We'd met with them about 5 days prior to the actual trial. They'd gone over the police report, and they'd met with the defendant. One of the attorneys had gone out to the store that had been victimized and talked to the store manager. The juries imposed sentences that I thought were very appropriate. They involved restitution, writing essays, 3 to 5 hours of community service. And everything went fairly, pardon?
There was community service, but a letter of apology, I think, to the businesses.
That's right. I'm sorry.
Yeah, that's all right.
But everything went very smoothly, and I was real impressed with the way everyone handled themselves.
I talked with the parents of the defendants later on, and they also thought it was very fair hearing for their children. So I think all in all it was a very positive experience for everybody involved. They took the responsibility and handled it very well. I think, like you mentioned, they're not trained to do these things, like years of law school, but I think they're going to learn from being there and doing it and seeing it in action. And I think it'll just take time to build to that point where they really feel comfortable, but they did a splendid job for the first time. Can't say anything good enough about how they handled themselves. I was very impressed myself.
Mickey, something we need to emphasize about this program is that everything that happens in court is confidential, and we stress confidentiality and give oaths of confidentiality, signed and verbal, and that's one of the very important aspects of the program. If we don't have that, defendants aren't going to be willing to come through teen court, and we are going to take a hard and fast line about that aspect of the program, and if someone violates the oath, they're certainly out of the program. They might be subject to prosecution because the juvenile normally has that in the regular juvenile system.
And I think that was very important for these young offenders coming in because some of the students knew them from going to school with them every day.
Right.
And they were very nervous. That was their main concern is, you know, what's going to happen? Are these students going to say hi to me? Are they going to reject me now because I've done this? Are they going to talk about me in a way that's derogatory? That was very important because these are young offenders who have gotten in trouble for the first time. And it was even shocking, I think, to some of the other students to see them there. And so that's why it's very important to stress that confidentiality. Also for the parents. The parents were concerned because you have to realize when the parents go in there and they see their children going through this process, they've gotten in trouble. You know, they're thinking a couple things. First of all, is they want to protect their children and make things right for them. They're also probably feeling like, where did I go wrong? You know, what could I have done differently so they wouldn't get into trouble? So I think they're very sensitive to what happens outside of there too, and they have that right to be respected for that privacy.
Okay. I think we did a good job explaining this. I'd like to thank the both of you for coming down today, and I hope the teen court will be successful for as many years as is needed. I've been your only host, Mickey Rogers, and thank you for joining us. Stay tuned for more programming.
Thank you for watching this episode of Teen Court. Please stay tuned to WLPS for more interesting shows.
Method lets you quit without the pain of going cold turkey. All you do is carry this credit card-sized computer in your pocket or purse, then just push the button whenever you smoke. The computer takes care of the rest, gradually taking you off cigarettes. It's that simple.
No more urges, no more cigarettes to smoke.
I've lost 4 pounds since being on the program, and it's fantastic. LifeSign really works. All you have to do is order it.
To order LifeSign, call the toll-free number on your screen now and save $10 off the regular price. Use your credit card and pay in 3 easy installments of only $24.98. With LifeSign's unconditional 60-day money-back guarantee.